Welcome to the Chasing Joy Show. This is episode 2 of season 1. I am your host. I am ARHartie, blogger and joy strategist from chasing-joy.com. And this is the Chasing Joy Show. This is an extension of everything that I have been talking about over the last 10 years related to happiness and creating the joyful life that you want. Now in live form as a show, where I'm going to be bringing on guests, mostly women, who I feel either exemplify what chasing joy looks like in their day-to-day life, or who have interesting perspectives on life that I think can be helpful to us in considering so that we can have more joy in our life. So, going to go ahead and get started. Our guest for tonight is Chanelle Schneider, and I'm going to ask her to go ahead and unmute herself and turn her camera on so that we can get started with the show. And I'm just going to shout out a couple people watching. I see Miss Lily watching, Tina was watching, and Karen was watching also. Hey, Chanelle.
Hey, girl, hey.
So we're going to start off with my favorite icebreaker. Before we even introduce you, we're just going to jump right in with 2 truths and a lie. So
I want you to know I spent a lot of time on this, so I hope
okay.
that I get you.
That makes me more excited about it.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know what 2 truths and a lie is, it's an icebreaker people typically do at meetings, conferences, wherever you want to break the ice, right? And each person here is just our guest, thinks up 2 truths and a lie about themselves. And then we are going to try and guess which one of her presumed truths is a lie. Okay. All right. So Chanelle, give us your truths.
Okay. Do you want me to do them all at once?
Yep. Give us all 3.
Okay. So 2 truths and a lie. In any order, obviously. So I was talking to this guy, and he told me that he regularly eats Scrapple. So I was like, oh, okay, what is that? I had no idea what it was. And so he told me, and I was like, okay, that seems interesting. But then I saw it on Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, and Guy Fieri tried it. And he was like, okay, well, this isn't as terrible as I thought it was going to be. And so I was like, okay, well, let me try it. It was interesting. That's all I got to say about that.
Okay.
So then this other guy that I was dating, he's good. He's a good cook. He actually made potato latkes and applesauce. And it was the first time I had ever had latkes. And well, latkes period, but latkes and applesauce. I was like, this is amazing. So when he told me he made tacos, I was like, okay, let me try it. He didn't tell me what it was made of. I just tried it, and it tasted seasoned and kind of spicy.
I'm scared.
And then he told me it was venison.
Oh, that's baby deer, right? Okay.
Yeah. Ground venison. Yeah. So we actually broke up. Had nothing to do with the venison, but we did break up. So there you go.
Okay.
So I have been in the Philly area now for 4 years, but the first time I came up here was to go to a house party, and it was located really close to the, I guess, island that Pat's and Gino's Steaks is on. And so I was in the area and I could have kind of walked over, but I didn't. Because I didn't know my way around, and I had gotten a ride up there and all this good stuff. So I never have I ever had a cheesesteak from Pat's or Gino's Steaks.
Mm. These are hard. These are hard. These are good. Okay, so for you guys who are watching, right? If you're watching the live stream, I can see your comments on my cell phone. Now there is about maybe like a 10-second delay from when we're talking and when it goes through the Zoom over to Facebook. So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes and let me know in the comments which one you think is the lie. I'm going to try and recap them, see as I think them over, because I don't know the answer to this one. So the first one that Chanelle said was that a guy had introduced her to the idea of Scrapple, but it didn't sound appealing. Then she saw it on Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives with Guy Fieri.
Mm-hmm.
And then, did you say you tried it or you didn't try it?
It was interesting.
You tried it.
Mm.
And it was interesting. Okay.
Mm.
Then the second one was, now was this a different guy or the same guy?
It's a different guy.
who made the, okay, a different guy.
Yep.
So Chanelle, she likes foodie, men who are foodies, I see. The second guy introduced her to potato latkes that he served with applesauce. It was really good.
Mm-hmm.
And then he made her some tacos with some, I'll call it mystery meat.
It was mystery meat.
She didn't know what it was. And it was good though, right? It was very good. It was very good. It was a mystery to her. And then you said it was good though, right? Before you found out what it was?
I was mad at how at that I liked it.
Okay, so she liked it, but then she found out it was venison. And for those who don't know, venison is baby deer.
It's Rudolph.
Well, Rudolph is
it's a reindeer.
Well, I guess he's a reindeer. I guess that's
family. Cousin.
I don't know. His family.
Cousin.
So that was the second one. And then the third one is that she moved up here and went to a house party that was near she called it an island, but like the intersection area where Pat's and Gino's are. And she could have walked over there, but she didn't feel that comfortable with the areas, not being from here. And so she didn't. So she has never had a cheesesteak from either Pat's or Gino's. So I don't know if you guys want to guess. I'm not seeing. Let me check on my computer to see if anybody's making any guess yet. I know kind of what my guess is. And I'm going to see. Let's see if anyone else wants to guess first. Miss Lily, I see you watching. What do you think? What do you think is the lie? What do you think is the lie? This is really hard. And I've known Chanelle for a while, which I'm going to get into when I formally introduce her in a moment.
That's why it took me a couple days.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you spending some time thinking about it too. Okay, so my guess for the truth, I think never having a cheesesteak from Pat's or Gino's is the truth. I think it's the truth because I have lived in Philly my whole life and I have never had a steak from Pat's or Gino's. So that's very, most people from Philly don't get their, unless they live near there, don't get their steaks from Pat's or Gino's. So that could easily be true. So Miss Lily says she thinks the taco with the deer meat is the lie. And Veronica thinks that the Pat's getting the cheesesteak from Pat's is the lie. Okay, so I think the Pat's thing is true. I think The Scrapple thing is true. So I'm going to go with the venison taco being the lie. So I'll do a drum roll. I don't know if you can hear it.
I have had a venison taco.
Oh, I was wrong. So what is the lie? Which one is the lie?
Never had Scrapple. I did talk to a guy that ate Scrapple and tried it, but I never had it. No.
Oh my gosh. I thought that was true because I eat Scrapple and I'm thinking like, and I've been to breakfast with you. And I'm like, does she? I feel like we talked about the Scrapple.
We have talked about Scrapple. We have
but you didn't try
Scrapple.
it.
I did not try it. Nope.
The idea of it is just still unappealing. Even with the guy
because
Fieri stamp of approval.
The one that guy had on Triple D was not what a true Philadelphian would consider to be Scrapple. It wasn't. It was basically like pulled pork mixed all together and ground up and then reformed into a loaf. Like it was.
That's what Scrapple is.
Yeah, but isn't it a little bit more like the parts of the pig that like nobody?
Well, I mean, the idea, it's called Scrapple. Like the idea of it was that it was from scraps. The parts of the animal that they didn't want to use for anything else.
Yeah.
You can get beef Scrapple, you can get pork Scrapple. Mm-hmm. I guess regular Scrapple is probably just pork, or maybe it's pork and beef. I don't know, but you can get beef.
I mean, I guess
if they take the scraps and I guess they ground it and they make it into a loaf. I mean, it is a loaf when you buy it, you slice it, you fry it. I usually put it in the oven because I just slice it all up and put it in the oven. And
I mean, I guess if I eat hot dogs, I shouldn't have a problem with.
So Veronica watches, so she loves scraps.
Really? Oh gosh.
Say it again. You said you have a problem with what? You said you have a problem with trying it?
Well, if I eat hot dogs, then I shouldn't have a problem.
It's the same concept. It's just not in a casing. It's the same concept. Yeah. So Veronica said that I love Scrapple with French toast at diners. Me too. And then Miss Lily said, I thought everyone eats Scrapple. So I think Scrapple is a regional thing. I think
it's so
people
regional.
From Philly eat Scrapple and grill up the Scrapple, thinking it's like just a everybody has it thing. But it's a very regional food.
Yes. No.
That's probably why it was on diners, drive-ins, and dives. No, it's
absolutely a regional thing. The only way that I had even heard of Scrapple, this dude, he was from Baltimore. Mm-hmm. You know, my South Jersey has started to pick up us in Baltimore. I should be ashamed of myself. Balmer. But yeah, maybe once COVID is over, y'all can take me to a spot that has some Scrapple and I could try it.
Yes. When COVID is over, we can definitely go to a diner and get Scrapple. Or I can make you some Scrapple.
Yes. Okay. I'll try it.
Okay. So let me formally introduce Chanelle to the show. So like I said, the whole point of the Chasing Joy show is for me to introduce mostly women. There's going to be a couple guys down the line, which is awesome. But mostly women who I feel are great examples of people who are chasing joy and or who offer an interesting perspective on life that I think can help us all to grasp joy and seek it in a different way. So Chanelle, not that she's not a good example of those who chase joy, but she definitely falls into the second group with the interesting perspective on life. I met Chanelle now almost 5 years ago, I think, or maybe 5 years ago. And similar, not quite as I would say, I won't say significant, but not as obvious as our previous guests, with us having met twice. Chanelle and I kind of met before we met as well, because Chanelle was the person who started A very popular Twitter chat at the time was called Gen Y Chat. Was that what it was called? Chanelle,
Yep.
I have that right?
Mm-hmm.
And I participated in the chat, not every week. It was like a weekly chat, correct?
Yep. Every Wednesday at 9 p.m.
Yeah. So I didn't participate every week, but I participated enough to know the name Gen Y Chat. And so therefore we had met over Twitter and didn't even realize it. Earlier on in my blogging career, this would have been around the time where Chasing Joy, I was trying to transition it a little bit more into a business. So I then met Chanelle for real through Stacey Ferguson of Blogalicious fame, who was my business advisor. I still consider her my business advisor, though I've not actually paid her for anything in quite a while. Oh yeah, I still have my Blogalicious Coke.
My bottle.
I never opened mine. Mine still has Coke in it.
Oh no, I drank it. I wasn't gonna waste the drink.
Well, I'm Team Pepsi all day.
Well, yeah, that I know. Yeah.
Know me, know that. So I just preserved the whole thing.
Yeah.
But we both were working with Stacey, and she had a workshop, and we both went and worked together all day on our businesses. And that's when Chanelle and I met for the first time in person. Yes, that's right. You did it, Rockstar. So
I did it. I'm a
Rockstar influencer program that we were a part of. I still consider Stacey to be my business advisor. That's how I refer to her when I talk to anyone about her.
I wouldn't consider anyone else to be an advisor for me.
So that's how we officially, right. So that's how we officially met. And then, so that was like in February. I believe that was in February of 2016. And then later on that year was Blogalicious. And I don't remember where we were going. I know I had to get on a plane. Was it Miami?
Airport, Atlanta.
Atlanta. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I'm in the airport, right? And so this whole story of how Chanelle and I became friends, I would say goes in the category of being brave, right? Because I'm sitting in the airport by myself and I'm looking around. I hate flying. I think I was just about to take my drugs that I take to fly. They're prescribed, don't worry, but I need to be medicated. And I see this girl across the room, and I'm like, oh, she looks so familiar. And I'm like, I think that's that girl who was at the Rockstar workshop day with Stacey. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, should I go over there? She's not making eye contact with me. She's not looking this way. Should I go? We're both at the same gate, so she has to be going to Blogalicious. Like, why else? Where else would she be going with us both having Stacey as our business advisor? So I was like, I'm just gonna be brave and walk on over, and hopefully she remembers me and I don't embarrass myself. And so I did, and we've been friends ever since. Basically, we hung out quite a bit at the conference because we both traveled solo. We didn't have roommates or anything, so we hung out a bit, and then realizing she
ordered room service and steak and something else. I don't remember.
See, Chanelle's a true foodie. I don't remember what we ate.
I'm saying food,
but I know we hung out. Yes. But I know we hung out, and it sounds about right that we would get room service. And she lives in South Jersey. I live in Philly. So I was like, we can hang out, and we've been basically hanging out and friends ever since. So the reason that I wanted Chanelle to be on the show is because she has a very interesting perspective on aging, ageism, all that. Yep. And I haven't told Chanelle this, but nothing bad. Calm down.
Okay. Like what are you about to do?
I feel like our conversations are also part of the inspiration for me to do the Chasing Joy show, because we've had so many really in-depth conversations related to like ageism and how we view getting older, and how people talk to younger people, how people talk to older people, people and how it impacts our happiness, that I've often felt like, man, somebody should have been watching this. Like this was good, and nobody's benefited from this conversation but us. So Chanel's definitely a person that I felt was worthy of uh, a conversation accompanied by a studio audience, right? So while Chanel gets herself together, I'll read a little bit from her website to give you a little of her background. So Chanelle Schneider is an analytical creative, a left-handed philosopher. These are her words. Who thinks in her creative mind through a logic lens. She's often the nobody most are referring to when they say nobody does that. Like nobody doesn't like Scrapple. There she is. Or nobody won't try Scrapple. There she is, right? She's a staunch defender of her millennial cohort. She's quick to remind people that millennials, I'm like that borderline thing, she's quick to remind people that millennials are 80 plus million deep with varying personalities and philosophies on life, and that they are not a monolith.
Yes.
Chanelle believes that we work better when everyone feels that they have agency and can act according to their dreams and not age-based restrictions.
You know, I wrote that a long time ago, and to hear you say it back to me, I'm like, all of those words are true. There's nothing in there that's inaccurate.
Yes. So you did a good job. It still describes you, even though you wrote it a while ago.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start off with the first question because I think that your background and your upbringing, Chanelle, is of Caribbean descent. And you can tell us a bit about that. But I think I've heard, I'm not from Caribbean descent or African descent, but I've come across enough people to have heard the common theme of those parents being extremely direct and blunt about their expectations of their children in terms of what they expect them to achieve and how they expect them to act.
Mm-hmm.
So how has coming up in that environment led you to this path of being an advocate for, I'll say, positive age-related talk and conversations?
Okay, well, I'll give you the short version first. When you grow up of Caribbean descent, and I am Crucian, you cannot tell in my voice anymore, and they tell me all the time that I sound like a Yankee. So I'm from St. Croix. My mom is from Dominica, the other island, not the Dominican Republic. My dad is from Puerto Rico. So that means that we are West Indian. And so West Indian people, they raise their children to be very concerned about education and intelligence and being resourceful. And so that is what I was brought up with. If you can't figure out how to do something, if there's, a piece of information you don't know, anything like that, the answer is go look it up. So when you're brought up in a culture where the child is raised by everyone in the family, the child becomes this person who is seen as intellectually inferior, or even just inferior, and any adult is superior to them. They automatically assume the child is going to lie because they think that the child is going to try to get away with anything and everything. And anytime a child tries to exert any kind of intellectual superiority, they, pull them back, and, it's that kind of stay in your lane mentality. And so when you're
like children are to be seen and not heard type of thing.
Yeah. And so when you're brought up in that culture and you try to develop your own sense of identity, it's difficult because you look at society and you look at it through this particular lens. So for me, I put adults on pedestals and anyone else my age as I'm looking to them as kind of guidance and friendship and, you know, trying to figure out how I'm supposed to get around in life. Well, when you grow up in a culture that loves education and intelligence, when you come to the States and there's a conflict with that, then the people who are your age call you a nerd. And and it doesn't help when you've been wearing glasses since you were 8. And, and so it's kind of like, okay, you don't really have friends. And then the people who are adults are like, I'm not your friend. So you're out here just paddling, trying to figure out life and how to get along. So you develop social anxieties. It's hard to know who you're supposed to connect with and talk to. And to me, everyone was to be respected. Everyone was capable of telling me what to do. And to me, it felt like I wasn't smarter than anyone else. Nothing I did was better than anyone else. Um, anything that I did achieve was average. And anything that anyone else did was vastly superior to me, even if it was just like, I don't know, they got 4 A's and I got 3 or something like that.
So it sounds like it wasn't even so much that nothing you did was exemplary. It was almost like whatever you did was still going to be considered less than what everyone else was doing just because you were a child.
Yeah. Oh God. I remember one time I got a call. I won't say from who, but it was a family member. And I was struggling in college. I was struggling in school for the first time ever. I graduated high school with a 4.3 GPA. But college, I was struggling because college was more about social. And I had promised myself that I would not go through another year of school where I wasn't talking to people and actively trying to make friends. And when it just wasn't working, it filtered into school. Um, and so I got a call from one of my family members and was like, well, what's taking you so long? Why are you struggling so much? Your aunt graduated in 3 years and this kind of thing. And I'm like, you're not helping me right now. And that was actually the last conversation I ever had with that person. And that's just an example of
Right. So not a lot of support.
Not a lot of support, no.
So when would you say was your first, I'll say, mini aha moment that, hey, just because these people are, considered adults and I'm not, or just because they're older than me, that doesn't automatically mean that they're right. Like, when was your first
Um
kind of
gosh.
aha moment of that?
Oh, that is hard to identify. I know that I was still, so I think the transition probably came late in, like, I was legit 28, I remember. Because it was just when I had just started on Twitter, and I was having regular conversations with people. I had started my chat, and this person, a woman, a Black woman, an older Black woman who had a child that was in college and was studying philosophy, my same major, was talking about her kid and how, like, philosophy was a useless major. She can't believe her child, wasting her life doing all this kind of stuff. And I wasn't saying anything. I was just reading the tweets. I'm like, okay. And then somehow she got onto the topic of, and then people with Twitter chats, they need to stay in their lane because nobody wants to learn from a kid about anything. And I was like, is she subtweeting me?
That felt personal.
And I was like, I feel personally attacked here. And that was before people were saying, microaggressions and feeling personally attacked. But yeah, I was, and here I was thinking that this was, I hadn't even met this person, but because of the culture and because of what was ingrained into my mindset as far as how you treat people who are older than you, I was deeply hurt by this. And it happened right before Christmas. And actually I remember because I was visiting my godmother. And again, the whole no support thing. So I didn't tell anyone. I just kind of kept to myself and was sad. And, and that, I think that is when I had to kind of pull myself out of it and realize, just because people say these mean things to you, it doesn't mean it's true. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes it's motivated by something that they're going through. And it's usually a coping mechanism, a defense mechanism. Mm-hmm. And really why I hate ageism and all of its sort of branches is because of what it does to people's thoughts as they're getting older. They start to, it's like they go from 29 to 12:01 a.m. on their birthday, and all of a sudden, oh, these kids, oh, these 20 somethings, oh, these this, oh, this that, oh, I'm 30 now, I know about life and everything in it, and I'm better because these kids don't know anything about life. And I'm like, you were just 29 10 minutes ago. You were just in your 20s.
Yeah, you just blew your candles out.
Right. All of a sudden, everything. Life is grand because you're in your 30s and everything is better now. Come on. You don't just get to talk about people who are in your 20s just because you're now 12, 30 and 2 seconds.
Right.
So to me, it's people do it for a kind of a two-pronged reason. It's so that, one, they can feel better about the fact that they're getting older by making fun of people and belittling people who are younger than them. And two, it's because they're afraid. They're afraid of losing relevance. Mm-hmm. And so the way to gain that relevance and to keep it is to build up your cohort of 30s and 40s and 50s something year olders, who are also now bashing younger people so that they can feel part of this group. There's actually a sociological term, it's in-group bonding. And what you do when you do all of this in-group bonding is you belittle an out-group so that your in-group can feel much more insular, much more intimate, and you can feel like you fit in now with this particular group that you're now in because you're 30 and 2 seconds years old. And so that's what I don't like about it, because to me, it's it's all marketing. If you look back at it, if you look back at all of the beauty ads and just anything that was trying to sell a product to women, a lot of things that were selling products to women. I've seen ads where they were talking about is it perfume or something? And they were saying, or I gotta find the specific example again. But basically it was saying that a woman cannot get a man if she looks old. So here's this, it wasn't wrinkle cream, but here's this wrinkle cream that's gonna save
who
your
decides?
Yeah.
And who determines what looking old is anyway, you know?
Exactly.
So in our conversations, you know, I've had a different experience growing up within my family. We're not Caribbean. And we were never made to really feel like our age was any kind of factor in terms of intelligence or common sense or abilities or anything like that. So I haven't had necessarily the same experience as you. However, I had two experiences growing up that really left an impression on me, so that when I became an aunt, I was highly aware of how much language and words and what you say to children matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you guys about those experiences in a second. So when Chanelle and I have had conversations related to this whole concept of age and how we talk to people, younger people and older people, I've always looked at it through the lens of my own language to my nieces and nephews. And now that I'm a mom, my own language to my son. So my two experiences were one, I'm just going to say my aunts, and I'm just going to give the disclaimer that all my aunts are amazing, wonderful people, and I'm sure none of them have any recollection of this occurring, because it probably was one of those things that we say all kind of things all the time and that don't have weight for us, but sometimes have weight for the person who the words land on, right? Mm-hmm. So my aunts are all amazing. I'm not going to say which one said it, and whoever, if they watch this, they can all just wonder if
was it me?
It was them, right? Because I'm sure they don't remember.
Yeah.
But so one time I was in a car with family, not my parents, but like cousins and and whenever my dad was driving me around, if I wanted to change the channel, which often, you know, kids don't typically want to listen to what their parents are listening to on the radio, right? I would say, "Oh, can we turn the channel?" So, and my dad would either say yes or no. But it was no big deal. Often he'd say, "I'll go ahead," but it was no big deal to make that request. And I remember saying this, and my aunt was like, well, she said, I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was basically like, what makes you think that you can just turn a channel? And I was so caught off guard, and I was the stereotypical goody two shoes kid, not used to getting in trouble or any kind of reprimands. So I was embarrassed and my feelings were hurt. And from that point on, I would very rarely request anything. Like, I became the most easygoing person. And that's now just a part of my personality. And most of the time I really am easygoing because I don't care about a lot of stuff. I'm not too picky about many things. But that was kind of the origins of that. And then at times there would be things that I maybe wanted to speak up on, but I just wouldn't, especially if it wasn't my mom or my dad. Now, my mom or my dad, it didn't change at home. But if I wasn't with immediate family, I would just fall back and I would not speak up. Like I said, that was such I'm sure no one remembers saying that to me, but that had a lasting impact. And then the second incident was my aunt, different aunt, I'll say, different aunt. I'll give you guys that clue, right? Different aunt was babysitting me, and I used to be very talkative when I was little, to the point where I remember my great grandmother on my mom's side, they nicknamed me Motor Mouth, right? But that didn't impact me. That wasn't like a negative thing, but just to emphasize how much I would talk. And apparently they were babysitting me, and I had probably been talking them to death all day. And my aunt pretended to be asleep. But I was old enough to be aware that she wasn't really sleeping. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, oh my gosh, they don't want to talk to me anymore. So, and I recovered, and I have great, I have good relationship with all my family.
Mhm.
So, there's no like lingering impact on the relationship, but it made a strong impression in my mind when my first niece was born and then her siblings. Like everything I say and every interaction I have with them could be lasting for them, and I might have no memory. So I just need to be careful of how I talk to them, and I never want them to feel like they're not important when they're talking to me.
Mhm.
And I hope that I've been successful. They'll tell me. Some of them are probably watching this or will watch the replay. They're adults now. So when we have these conversations, I'm always thinking about like baby Joy Chaser and like how I talk to him and like what he's gonna tell his therapist one day. Cause I go to a therapist, so like I'm just gonna assume he's gonna go to one and complain about his mom because that's what happens. But I'm like, which conversation is it going to be? So just from your experience and your perspective, like what general advice could you give to people about how they talk to people who are younger than them, and like maybe what perspective they should take on when they are in these conversations? And then I'm going to flip it twofold
Yeah.
because ageism isn't like a one-way street. What do you think we should be saying to older people too, and how should we be talking to them? So you can address
Yeah.
those two together.
So I'll start with the second question because that's shorter. It's when okay, so ageism is actually, the way that it's defined is interactions with older people that cast them in a negative light, that discriminate against them, that actively seek to prevent their I don't know, careers from starting, anything like that.
Like employment.
Yes, anything that actively seeks to prevent their employment in different spaces, um, and basically actively works against the betterment of their lives. Um, so when young people are commenting about older people, a lot of times they're doing it not aware, and they're unaware of what they're saying. They're just doing it because, oh, this is what society does. They make fun of older people. But the underlying reason for that is also fear, and it's fear that's being uh, kind of built in their minds from the time that they're young by the people who are raising them. Um, and it's the thing to remember about, saying things about older people is that one day we'll get old. That's the thing about ageism, is that you can't escape it. The when You can't escape getting older. Some people will try to escape any other kind of ism by hiding it, trying to identify with other,
Yes,
yeah.
that's been
Um,
happening frequently recently with the Ivy Park stuff.
so yes. And the put laws into place so that things won't happen. But when when you have a society that markets against getting older and promotes this idea that only youth is beautiful, then you set it up such that people will always be afraid of older people, because to them it represents death and dying and all of that stuff that everyone is told to be afraid of. It's that movie that I saw. What was it? I think it's the one with Ashton Kutcher and I can't remember her name. Like Friends with Benefits. I think it's called Friends with Benefits. But basically there's this woman in the movie, this young woman who won't even ride in elevators with older people because she's terrified of them. Because she's afraid of what it means to, be around older people. Like, oh, I could die one day. It's just like, so keeping the perspective that somebody who's older was exactly your age at one point in their life. And so the things that you're saying to them are going to be said to you one day. So try to keep that perspective, because if we keep up this cycle of saying things to make ourselves feel better about being younger and they're older and they're irrelevant, or they're, okay boomer and all of this kind of stuff, like, it's cute and it's funny, but it's not going to be funny when you were the boomer one day, and you're upset because some millennial version of millennial is now making fun of you. So try to, keep that perspective is what I would say to somebody. But with the knowledge that millennials will one day be older and will still be called millennials.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever generation it is by then, I don't know, B, C, D, X.
Who knows?
Roll back around to X. It's going to be like, okay, millennial, because the millennials are now 80 years old. Because you do stay in your generation. I don't know what's happening lately with people think that just because they're 30 years old, they're not a millennial anymore. It's like, no.
Well, I think it's because some people don't really. I'm one of those people. Like, I don't really understand the groupings of the generations, because that wasn't something that was really talked about or common with me and my culture growing up. It wasn't until I was like closer to an adult I even heard of baby boomers, and I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know that there was a name for my generation. And then when like the millennial group got that name, everyone was talking about millennial. And maybe just because it was called millennial and like the millennium, I think it just made it a very popular, right. It made it a very popular name for grouping. And so then people are like, oh, well, what group am I? Oh, well, you're Gen X, and then this Zennials. And so I think people don't understand what those names mean, that it actually applies to people born in certain years, not people who are a certain age.
Exactly.
Because they're just not familiar with it, and it's just now it's like a hot topic for media and stuff like that. So what advice for when you're talking to younger people?
So to kind of segue into that, the reason I got into the generations and ageism and all of that was because I watched this movie called Reality Bites, and that whole movie is about Gen Xers and all of the stereotypes associated with being Gen X and slacker and being a slacker, and all of these different types of stereotypes. And so, and then of course I had my Gen Y chat, and the whole premise of that was actually building a bridge between the generations so that we could have intergenerational discussions with each other to see that, just because somebody is a Gen Xer, that doesn't mean that they're a slacker. Just because someone's a Gen Yer also doesn't mean that they're a slacker. And then just because they're a boomer doesn't mean that they're completely irrelevant, they don't know anything, and they have no idea how to work these buttons on this machine called a computer. Like, why are you even on Twitter, you boomer? How do you know how to use this? So that's an example of something that you should not say to a boomer. And then going back the other direction is, boomers shouldn't be assuming that all millennials know how to use digital, because just because we sort of grew up with it doesn't mean that, we hacked our computers and learned what a dongle is. Like, not all of us know what that is.
What is that? quickly.
So a dongle basically like makes these things work, right? So if it's this little bitty thing, it kind of looks like a SIM card or like kind of like a digital card like this. You plug it into the USB
Is it like
port.
this thing? So like one of these?
Yes.
Okay, that's for like my mouse. Okay, I didn't know it had a name.
Yeah.
Cool.
So see, there you go. You're an exennial. I'm kind of like exennial-ish as well.
Yeah, because I'm 1980, so I'm like in between when I do those things. Like I I had internet, but I also remember getting internet.
Yeah.
And I remember getting an email.
Yes.
And I
I
had a
remember our first
pager.
computer.
I had a pager.
Yeah.
And then I got a cell phone.
Yep.
So
Yeah. And I mean,
I think my go ahead.
So these are the things that, you know, people, when the thing that I want to say about, okay, real quick. So the guy who actually originated all of these different categories of people was Douglas Copeland. He wrote a book about people in the 60s and called them Generation X. And he never intended for it to be this label that put all of the people from this generation into this negative light. Marketers who are always looking for ways to segment their audience so that they can determine who to sell things to latched on to this Generation X descriptor and used it as a way to sell to this particular subset of people. And then it went from Generation X, oh, let's call the next generation Generation Y. So now we're at Gen Z. Somebody wants to call them alphas, and somebody else approached me to call them something else, something with a P word. I forget exactly what the word was, but I couldn't even figure it out.
I don't remember. I recently heard of a name for a generation that were for kids who were a little bit older than my son, who maybe were like maybe born before 2015. But I don't remember what it was, and I was like, oh, they got a name already.
Yeah. So the way that it works is it's supposed to go with the census, right? So it's supposed to go with
every 10 years.
The bell curve. And the majority of people born to a certain generation is when it's supposed to start over again, right? So millennials are supposed to go from 80 to 83 to, I think it was 1999, I want to say, or 2000. And then obviously you've got 2000 to 2020. So that's supposed to be Gen Z. So then anything after that is the next generation alpha. Right. So whenever people are talking about, oh, millennials are doing this, oh, millennials are doing that, I'm like, y'all are talking about people who are in college right now. So you're talking about teenagers. That's not my generation, first of all. And I'm not saying it so that I can disassociate. I'm saying get your generation right. Like if you're going to hate against a type of people, then at least know who you're talking about.
Right.
Because
I think my main takeaways from like the conversations we've had and well, first let me say the reason I think these kind of conversations are important is because when you've not personally been impacted by something, you are just so unaware of how it can impact others. And so, you know, knowing Chanelle and hearing a lot, you know, more detail about her, you know, her personal experience, and how being looked at a certain way just because of her age impacted her long term, it's kind of made me more aware of different things around me. And so my kind of main takeaway from the conversations we've had, and then things that I've since noticed since my like eyes have been opened, is just I think that we just need to lead with kindness, like when we talk. Like even if somebody, you know, who's older at work is having trouble with the technology, like we don't need to like belittle them because of that. And then a second thing, and it made me think of you this week. So this week in my day job, I've been in a training. So I became a supervisor at work this year in 2020. And so I had to go to a human resource training, my first one, right? And so to Chanelle's earlier point, like with the official definitions of discrimination, so when we're going over like rules, right, for hiring people and stuff, and like there's actual laws about for people age 40 and up and how to treat them. But they said now in 10 other than 10 states, which they didn't say which 10 states, with the exception of 10 states, there are no laws protecting younger people from being judged based on their age in a hiring situation. But 10 states have it now. And I was like, oh, that's good news, at least in some states. But another thing that was said in the training was that when you're interviewing people, to try to become aware of your biases so that you can attempt, we're human, so we're not going to be perfect, but if you can become aware of your biases, you can attempt to keep them in check when you're in the process. And so just in one of the examples the teacher was giving, so I work for military, for those who don't know, and he was talking about a particular military installation that a lot of retired military people would get a civilian job there. So the typical age range for the group of people there was older, because this was people who maybe already did their 20 years in the military, and now they're getting a civilian job. And so the general perspective was the people come here to retire. And so just if you were at that place, for example, interviewing, to try and keep your bias in place, like don't automatically assume that just because someone is interviewing here and they happen to be older, that they have one foot out the door of retiring.
Yeah.
Or like, I guess be purposefully trying to only bring in younger people because all these old people about to retire when you don't really know. So I think like my takeaways have just been like, just try and lead with kindness and be aware of your biases and try to not lead with them, right? So I wanted to share with you, because I saw this today. It's nothing bad. I thought it was a positive thing. And it's something that I've been seeing recently. Like I said, after, getting to know Chanelle, having these conversations, I feel like I see people sharing similar experiences as her all the time. And I'm like, wow, people, that wasn't my struggle, but like, yeah, people really have had to have these points that they come to in their life where they have to be like, well, wait a minute, just because this person's older than me doesn't automatically mean that they, know what they're talking about and I don't. So today on Facebook, someone in my timeline wrote, only in a Black household is having a difference in opinion viewed as being disrespectful. Definitely stopping that cycle right here. And I was like, okay, that's good. Like, so, and I've seen that, and I've seen, like I mentioned, people, being in situations where people are being, disrespectful to them, maybe in the workplace, or not speaking up for themselves to go after opportunities. Because the person they might have to stand up to was older than them, and they just, have been so trained, like almost like respecting your elders meant that they can do no wrong, and that's not true, So like, what advice would you give to like this person who has already decided that they're going to stop that cycle, and other people who are just kind of waking up to the idea of, what, like, I have value as well, and what I say matters, not because I'm younger or because you're older, but it just has meaning, and I have value, and I don't have to kind of bow down to someone just because they're older than me. What advice would you give for someone who wants to break those cycles?
Okay, so for the person that wants to break those cycles, realize that you don't have to do what your family tells you to do. I mean, they don't know everything. We're all out here trying to figure out life, and whatever it is that they think that they have figured out worked for them when they were growing up, and unless they're willing to open their minds to other thoughts, and if they're putting down your thought even when you're 35, just because you're 35 and you don't know anything, then that's a good indication that they're not willing to listen to you simply because you're younger. And they're blocking anything that comes from someone who clearly doesn't know enough about life, because I I don't know. I've washed more fish than you've even the years that you've lived, or some whatever other kind of thing that people say all the time. Like
Like you're wet behind the ears. I still
yeah,
smell the
you
Similac
know,
on you.
like I've
Things
jumped
that
rope more times than you've ever even woken up. Like all these different things, any number of things that people say just to kind of justify that they know more than you just because they've lived more years. Like that's not necessarily the case. I mean,
right.
there's we study things, we have different experiences, and there's no reason to belittle your own experiences in life simply because someone older than you is telling you that you're not worthy. I mean, and then too, for those words to be coming from an older person, I I used to take it to heart, and when you said the bit about only in a black family having a difference of opinion is considered disrespect, that reaches to me to my core, because that is constantly the reason growing up, and even today I'm still working on it, where I will not contradict someone who's an authority, even someone who's just even my own age or even a little younger. Like I won't contradict anyone because I don't want to be seen as disrespectful.
Mm.
But and because to my mind it's like, who do I think I am to question this person who is obviously saying this because they must know more than me? I mean, you have told me, and I have told you recently, that I really like the way that you speak to your younger family members, because you engage with them in a way where you're actually talking to them and listening and repeating back what they're saying. And wow, like that's shocking. Actually having conversations with young people and thinking that their lives are interesting beyond the standard that I got, which was how's school? Oh, okay,
Mm.
all right, well, where's your mom?
Right.
Like if they even talked to me on the phone, it was I was talked to through my mom.
There's a couple comments that I missed.
Yeah.
Mm. So there's a couple comments on Facebook that I missed, but really quickly before I touch on those, I feel like it can be tricky with talking to people who are younger, which I do often because of these nieces and nephews that I have, because I do. And when you are older than someone, you do have certain life experiences that they don't,
Mm-hmm.
that make you see things differently. And I do think we gain wisdom as we get
Mm-hmm.
older.
Sure.
So it can be tricky to like navigate those conversations where, I'm trying to share like wisdom that I've gained, but I also don't want to make you feel like you don't know anything.
Well, so I mean,
So
the
what
thing about
I
that is,
typically what I typically go with is, like you said, like the listening and repeating back and trying to acknowledge, like,
yeah.
hey, you're smart and
Mm-hmm.
you've had these experiences, and
Mm-hmm.
I know you have good common sense, and I know, like, kind of boost them up, and then I'll share. But I've had this experience in my time that, I want to share with you to keep in mind and kind of still put it back on them to make the decision. And I think um, one thing my parents did with me that I think was helpful for me and not having a whole lot of this age bias in my mind when I'm talking to people is they always made me feel like I was smart enough to make decisions, right? Obviously when I was younger, they were small decisions. And then as I got older, they were bigger decisions. So I always kind of present it that way. Like, I understand you're saying blah, 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 blah. And you're very smart. And I know you've looked into this and you're going to research it more. This is experience that I've had, and I want you to keep this in mind when you're making your decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Especially as they become like adults, right? Because I feel like telling adults what to do doesn't work.
Right.
Sometimes it's somebody's doing something super dangerous and you have to do like a hard line, like, okay, you can't do drugs and be in my house. Like, that's the obvious thing. There's no like, when you make a decision about drug abuse, I know you'll do the right, like, no.
There's definitely that fine line of walking where it's like, you don't want to be like, the more you know, or you don't want it to be an educational special every time you're about to talk to them, because then they know that that's what's coming.
Right.
But to me, okay, this is what I don't like. The mayor of New York, when COVID broke out, they were showing all of these stories about young people who were still congregating on beaches and enjoying themselves, right? The conversation at that time was, young people can't get this, they can only spread it. As long as you guys stay to your groups, it's fine. So what did the young people do? They listened to the older people who were telling them with their tiny hands that you can't get this, you'll be fine, it's okay. So, but then when it comes out in all these pictures, all of a sudden there are these idiots. This is coming from the mayor of New York. They're idiots who don't know how to handle life, and what are they doing, and they're just stupid and all this kind of stuff. How does that help? In what world does that encourage a younger person to listen to an older person? Right. In what world does that?
Or anybody to listen to anybody when you're name calling? Again, it's like you're not leading with kindness.
Exactly. So meanwhile, maybe a couple of days later, I would watch the news again, and then they would show another beach. This time, this beach was being frequented by people who had their families out. So it was Gen Xers, it was boomers, all on the beach, all not wearing masks, but they were with their kids, their young kids, or their families, and all of this stuff. And so it was, oh, look at this scene of all of these people having fun with their families. And I'm like, wait a record scratch. Like 2 days ago, the same people who were hanging out were idiots, but these people over here are beautiful and having fun with their families, and they're
right. It's like a bias.
Exactly.
It's in this country, and probably most of the world, but in this country, it's definitely like youth is to be admired for how it looks, and it should just be quiet because it's not smart.
Exactly.
And then old people, or older people should be revered for their wisdom. But you're not attractive, you're not sexy, stay hidden.
Exactly.
Kind of thing. So a couple comments that we had.
Okay.
So Miss Lily was saying that she remembers getting in the chat rooms on AOL.
Mm-hmm.
I think I did that for like a minute and then it was over.
Yep, I remember that, the little AOL IM screen with the running in. Yep.
Veronica says she is Gen X, and she said she didn't really work the internet until the middle of college. Miss Lily said, me too. And the Veronica's pointing out that the young girl from Blackish is the youngest executive producer at 14.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and her name escapes me at the moment. Do you know her name?
It's not Yara. It's the other young
Yes.
lady. Her name escapes me. I
Me
know.
too.
I just watched her movie the other day, Big. Which
Yeah, that was good.
it's a redoing
Mhm.
of Tom Hanks's Big, which was very cool.
Yeah. There's been a few of those where they swap kind of thing.
Yeah.
Freaky
Yeah.
Friday. It's been a bunch. Like they
Mhm.
redo it every few years.
Yeah.
Let's see. Veronica says she's encountered children that have definitely experienced many things that are behind their years. And those children definitely had to grow up fast. And that did
Exactly.
impact their perspective on life
Exactly.
and their approach to listening to quote adults.
Yep.
And then Miss Lily is saying she thinks some children had to grow up fast in their environment and they're more street
Yep.
smart than their peers. Yeah, like we have to treat people as individuals and like in general, this whole grouping thing, like just because people are from this generation or that generation, that doesn't mean they're all one way. Like just like Chanelle was saying in her bio,
Not a
80
monolith.
million millennials, like, and then often, honestly, like there's a, it's so like multifaceted, like because you have this whole intersection of race and also class when people are really talking about millennials, because often the
Yep.
behaviors that
Yep.
they're zeroing in on are
Not this.
behaviors that are typically, not that we should be grouping, but they're typically grouping behaviors of upper class
Yep.
white people.
Yep.
And then they're saying a whole
Yeah.
generation of people acts a certain way, so
I'll
we
give
need
you
to
a
not.
perfect example. When I was running my Gen Y chat, I brought up the discussion about children and them children and presents and do you remember having to kind of manipulate your parents to try to turn on a certain station so that you could encourage them to get this particular present and all this kind of stuff. And um be, because your parents didn't have money, that kind of thing. And so this one girl in the chat, I remember she said something to the effect of, I've never met a child that would not ask for what they want for Christmas. And I'm like, you must have never been around poor kids, because for me, I never asked for expensive things for Christmas. I would kind of like try to suggest it, but I always just knew that I was going to get clothes and whatever else I needed. I just never asked for it.
Yeah. So let's see. I'm going to let this be our last, well, second to last kind of deep question. In general, how do you think people's view of age, right? Like their personal view of aging and getting older impacts their happiness?
Yeah. So I know people who,
And how could they view it differently or view it in a way that was more positive and encouraging?
yeah. Um, I have to admit, one of the things that in my hiatus from my chat and just hiatus from social media in general, I have backed off a lot from embedding myself into conversations that other people were having about age and how they felt about it. I used to kind of just get into it and be like, no, you shouldn't feel that way, and here's why. Um, I I give people the freedom to say exactly what they want to say because their feelings are valid. But what I want is for people to investigate the source of those feelings.
Right.
Because if they're coming from external forces, words in your ear, anyone other than you actually feeling that way, then it requires deprogramming. You have to assess and ask yourself questions. Why am I feeling this way right now? Why am I feeling like all of a sudden I have to start talking about this young person, or say that this guy who's 26 can't possibly be a good mate for me because I'm such and such age. He's just a child. Really?
Thank you for co-signing that. So when I get my 27-year-old boyfriend, you guys don't give me a hard way to go.
I would love it. I would love it. Get you one. So no, because
or my 52-year-old boyfriend. I guess I
yes,
could be open to both sides. I
do
won't be
it.
ageist.
Yeah. I mean, look at Dwayne Wade and God, Gabrielle Union. I mean, uh, and everybody else who's
There's an age gap with them. I don't know much about them.
11 years, I think.
Okay. My parents were 10 years apart. My dad
Yeah.
was 10 years older than my mom.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, that's to say,
I agree with you on the being introspective.
Mhm.
For me personally, the only times that I had a hard time with getting older were before I had my son, and it was because certain factors, biological factors, are like that didn't bother me. Certain factors, I know, certain factors are what they are in terms of like
Yeah.
fertility and things like that. We can't as women often be pregnant at 50, so like there are some real kind of time limits. So as I was getting older and feeling like I wouldn't be able to have a family, that gave me a lot of anxiety about like upcoming birthdays. But it really wasn't necessarily about me getting older per se. It was, there were certain goals about my life that I was not at that time able to achieve.
Yeah.
And since I did that whole single mom by choice route, got pregnant on my own, I've had a lot less anxiety about getting older. But I definitely feel like sometimes when we have this list of things we want to do and we match it up with our age, it can create some anxiety. So I definitely agree with you and kind of taking a deep dive into what's actually causing us to have angst.
I think you do it the right way, because a lot of times in our conversations, the the motivating factor for you to kind of fear aging is actually fact based. Like, it's science based. It's not emotional. It's not what everybody else is saying. It's rooted in some kind of
Right.
truth about
So
the fact
like
that get
one of the
older.
comments that we have from Janice, she's saying that for her, being in her mid 40s, the thing that's had impacted her is just like the physical changes that your body goes through.
Right.
And like that could be challenging too, because one, the physical challenges can be uncomfortable, just like just having aches and pains. And then I think it's also like a feeling of out of control. Like I have a couple glitter strands in my hair, and I personally like how my hair looks. I'll probably dye it at one point if I get more gray coming. But it's just the feeling like, why? Like, I didn't say I want my hair to look a different color. Like, I don't have control over that. Now it's just growing out of my head a different color. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think the lack of control too, as
So
things start to happen as you age, can make you feel like I can't, like I'm not telling my body to do all this stuff. Now so I wake up and my neck hurt for no reason, just because I woke up. Like, it didn't used to do that.
Yeah. Like, I was working, I sell glasses, and this woman came in, and she was a first time progressive wearer. So a progressive is a bifocal. So she had never worn glasses in her life, and now all of a sudden she comes in, she's in her 40s and is like, I have to wear, I've never worn glasses before. Can you please just like tell me, I don't even know where to start. What do I do? And I felt so bad for her, because I'm sitting here and I see it in her face. She hates the fact that she's getting older and now has to wear glasses. And this is an indication of this. And I'm just like, this is what I hate about what society tells us about getting older. And to me, I feel like I want people to love their birthdays, because the opposite of this is death. You're alive. Like, love the fact that you're getting a year older, because it means that you're alive. There's a line from Ghosts of Girlfriends Past.
Right. And I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
The challenge, though, is when those things happen, it's a reminder that your body is deteriorating in some ways. But we've been deteriorating forever. But you don't, right? But the reminders is what it's now more in your face when suddenly you can't see.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, oh no, I have to go ahead. And it's like, again, out of my control. Like, this is happening to me. And for me, things happening to me, or my perspective that things are happening to me, is a huge trigger for anxiety, you know. So let me read a couple more comments and then we'll lighten it up slightly before we end. My brother's on here. He says he has a few glitter strands himself, which is funny.
Like right there, see that? All of that right there. Bling! And then there's more here, and there's some just like embedded into this lovely fake hair. Yeah, I have no intention of dyeing my hair once it turns.
Yeah, I definitely will dye my hair because I like how my hair looks now. Like, I'm not asking it to change colors. And maybe one day I'm, not.
And see, that's the perspective that I like from you. You're dyeing your hair because you want the control over how it looks, not because you're afraid of what it means that your hair is going gray. You know, like there's that fine line that you walk.
Right. But I think
talk to ourselves with kindness about getting older. I mean, I
think it can be though very daunting, and we're all going to be on a different continuum when it comes to how well we deal with that. Like Miss Lily is saying in the comments that, the way society views you as you age naturally, like we can put on all our confidence and then we leave the house and are like an onslaught of negative, and we're all going to be at a different place of how we fend that off. And day to day, it could be different. My brother says no dye for him. Yeah.
Love it.
But his hair is increasingly more white. That's why this is funny to me.
I love it.
When he says he has
Embrace it.
Yeah.
Embrace it.
And then it's also, again, things are like multifaceted. It's way easier for men to embrace that than women.
Oh, that is true. I mean, that's a layer of it, right? There's a whole sexism that's mixed in with ageism. Look this whole thing with Dr. Jill Biden. Like, really, like the fact that she was called kiddo in this piece in Wall Street Journal by a man.
And they would discount her doctorate. Come on, because she's not a medical doctor. It's so dumb.
All of the think pieces and hot takes that I have read that kind of followed up from this, no one's talking about this in the lens of ageism. They're all saying that it's sexism to call her kiddo. And I'm like, y'all don't understand the fact that he's calling her kiddo to kind of put her in her place?
Well, Chanelle, that's part of why I wanted you on the show, because we need more voices like yours helping people to see that perspective. Because again, if this hasn't been something that, like we all have our cross to bear, right? Things that we have to deal with. If this hasn't been your cross, you're not going to see it from that perspective unless you have people pointing it out to you. So we've been talking for like almost an hour and a half.
Yeah, and this is what happens.
Which is not uncommon for us. We've had
crab and all this, and we talk for 3 hours, and next thing it's like midnight, and we're like, oh my God, it's time to go home.
Right. Yes, we've had many, many long conversations. So one thing we haven't touched on, and I'm saying in my mind, I'm asking all my guests, even though you're only my second guest, but I'm going to continue to ask my guests. We are in the middle of a pandemic still, though there's a little bit of I'll just call it a glimmer at the end of the tunnel. I don't know if I'm calling it a light yet. as some people are getting vaccine, and
Some
hopefully that vaccine will be okay.
supporting the team.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Joy. Yes, I love that. So Chanelle in her day life when she's, not knee deep in ageism, but in her day job stuff, she works from home and always has.
6 years.
So yeah, 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it has been no secret to those of you who are watching the live stream, the live, for those who see this later or who see this on YouTube, my studio audience, this is being live streamed in a Chasing Joy private group. So if you want to see all these interviews and other things in real time, you guys should all join the Chasing Joy Chasers private Facebook group. But yeah, I've been pretty open here in the group at my challenges and struggles with just managing working from home full time with a toddler, and my stress and anxiety related to the pandemic. But you've been working from home for 6 years. So I feel like you qualify as an expert in this telework environment that a lot of us have been thrust into. So before we sign off, it would be remiss of me to not ask you to give us some pointers, help, tips, whatever comes to mind to make
So
this
the
better.
first one, that came up pretty recently is if you're not going to sit on your couch and you want to sit in a chair, have a good chair. Have a supportive chair that is not going to make your booty sweat. And
Okay.
and because when you are sitting for a long time, and I just got this hair done yesterday, it took 14 hours, and the chair killed me.
Wow.
So when you're sitting in a chair for that long, make sure you have a good supportive chair. I always go for the kind of $90 and up chairs that have the good support that you can lean back into, get a little bit of a rest, sit up straight in, and try to always sit up straight and instead of doing, the slouch.
Sit up straight.
Yes. Because when you're slouching, this is actually putting more pressure on your spine. So sit up straight. It's not just something that we were taught as kids and then forgot or are rebelling against. It's actually good for your back, because at the end of the day, when you're wondering why your back is hurting, it's not because you're 45, it's because you've been sitting bad. Mm-hmm. I mean, and then I own a massage chair. I'm not going to spin this camera around because I've got a whole Christmas box mess situation going on behind these doors. Lots of packages. So Brookstone Homedics, I fully admit to getting on that massage chair every once in a while, because there will definitely be some kind of tweak in your hip, some twinge in your back, something at your neck that is just a kink. And instead of saying, oh my God, I'm 40 and everything's falling apart on me, you can fix it. And especially in this pandemic, when we cannot go to our masseuse and any kind of chiropractor or anything like that, a massage chair can work wonders. Just don't do it back to back to back with shirts that can cause friction, because you'll end up with friction burns on your back like I did, which is not good. So that's another tip. Just do it once and then take a break and then do it again later. And just from an emotional side of things, so as far as managing yourself goes, when maybe you're an extrovert and aren't accustomed to not being in an office, the only thing that I can say to kind of help with this, because I am kind of an introvert, and I'm an only child, and I was a latchkey kid, and I was raising myself and cooking my own food and doing laundry by the time I was 7. So I kind of have a very different kind of unique perspective on COVID, because I kind of feel like COVID has been my life, my whole life. But I say that to say that the way that I have learned how to, I won't even say cope, like it feels like it's just what I do naturally. I make sure that I have sounds around me that are soothing, whether or not it's television, the radio, silence. If you can get silence, I know a lot of people are home with their kids or their
How,
partners.
how do you think a 2-year-old screaming ranks on that scale?
So I live in an apartment. I have a hallway right here.
Mm.
Okay? And I have neighbors that have very loud children that like to run up through the hallway every single day. These babies, active noise cancellation. Okay?
I don't know. I don't know if I could get away with that with my own kid though. That might be frowned upon.
That is very true.
But that's a good point though. If you have noisy neighbors or distracting noises happening, because if you don't have an office, not
I mean,
everyone has. Like I don't have an office here. You don't have an office. Like with a lot of people don't have an office space at home. Well, they have an office space now.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily have an office where they can close the door. So
right.
I think that's definitely a good tip with the noise canceling.
Yeah. I mean, when by the time my mom was working from home, I was in my early teens to mid-teens. So for me, I had already become accustomed to being quiet anyway, just again, children seen, not heard. But for me, like the way that I knew my mom was on calls, I would kind of tiptoe, I would kind of quietly open my door, peek around. Are you on a call? She'd be like, no, I'm good, I'm muted. No. Okay. And then I would just like run about and do whatever, So for a 2-year-old, I'm just not sure how because my earliest memories of myself is probably maybe 4 or 5 years old. And
there's nothing I can do. I know.
I just don't, especially because you don't really have someone else in your house who can like gather the child. My coworkers
I do think
who are all home and trying to work with their kids, they have babysitters, they have au pairs, they have somebody else who is watching their kid when they're on all of these conference calls back to back.
Yeah.
So that's why I say all the time, you are a trooper and a superwoman.
Thank you.
Doing all of this, like, because nope, I wouldn't do it.
You reminded me of, I guess I'll say a tip for someone, if you are blessed with a home office, somebody, I don't remember where I saw it, but they would put a sign on their door whenever they were on a call so that their kids, their family would know, like, okay, don't knock on the door or something right now. Especially if you have bigger kids who are old enough to understand that. Yeah. So if you guys are watching, if you have any questions or last comments that you want to share with myself or Chanelle, now is your time. Go ahead and just put it in the comments. Let me see, what did I miss? My brother says when he was younger, he always felt comfortable around adults. They seem sensible. No, they seem stable. That was my experience too. And I think it has a lot to do with how we were treated in our family and the adults that we were probably exposed to and allowed to be around. Yeah. And I remember in my, early teenage years, my teen years were not my best years. Like you couldn't pay me to be a teenager again or to go to back to high school. Like for some people, that was like their moment and they would love to relive it. I'm not that person.
I don't want
And one of the awkward things that I experienced is I would visit friends and I would feel like I was more comfortable talking to their parents, their mom or whoever, than I was to talking to the other kids that were in the room.
Yeah.
So I could definitely relate to what Shane is saying. All right, so you guys, if you have any more questions, let's put them in the comments. But I'm going to ask Chanelle my final two questions. So for those of you who've been following Chasing Joy for a while, you might remember my quarterly newsletter that I did for a couple of years before I had a child and I had more time in my hands. I would always ask two kind of lighthearted questions in my newsletter. And so I'm bringing those forward to the show. So, Chanelle, share with us the last movie that you saw. Doesn't have to be in a theater or anything. And the last trip you went on, and it does not have to have been on a plane or a vacation, just let's say the last place you went for either like a day trip or where you spent the night away from your own, your own bed at home.
So the last place I went down to see my mom and my aunt in Maryland. And we went to this restaurant down at the harbor, the National Harbor, that had this amazing salt and pepper crusted fish, like fried fish. So good, it's ridiculous. I really want to get a piece of fish and figure out how to cook that myself because it was amazing. So that was the last trip I went on. The last movie I watched, to like literally a few hours ago, was Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. And I probably watched it 5 times this month already. So yeah.
Wait, say it again. I missed it.
Home Alone 2.
Oh, Home Alone 2.
Lost in New York. And prior to that, I was watching Home Alone.
Yeah. Okay. Well, 'tis the season.
Yes.
For Home Alone
It is
movies.
the season.
Definitely.
But, like those movies, again, it just goes back to like how I grew up. Like those movies would have been 20 minutes long if it was my life, because if somebody had left me at home and I was 10, I would have gotten one call. Are you okay? You good, right? Yep. Okay. Did you, eat anything? What did you cook? Okay. All right. Okay, bye. That would have been it.
You just reminded me
running through airports. My child is lost and in New York, and my child is at home, and I left my child. Nobody would have been scared. They would have been like, "Oh, she's good. She stays home by herself all the time. She's fine."
So you reminded me of a funny story. You talk about being left alone. So growing up, my dad was considered like overprotective by most people who know our family of me. And so it's ironic that he left me one time accidentally outside and drove off. And I have no memory of it. Like I just remember him and my mom like telling me like when I was older. So I grew up in a blended family. So my brother who's watching, Shane, and I, we have different moms, but for most of my life, his mom lived near us, like that where they could walk over, maybe like a 15-minute walk to her house. And so the boys, Shane and my other brother, were at their mom's, and my dad was going to go pick them up. And we had come outside to get in the car, and I had walked down the street to talk to one of my friends, another little girl, and I was talking to her. And my dad just got in the car and left and drove over there. And he got all the way there and then went to open the back seat to let me out, and I was not there. So he had to race back, which probably was like at most a 7-minute drive.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even 10 whole minutes probably for him to get there. See, I wasn't there, and like raced back. Yeah. And apparently I was sitting on the step like so pissed off. And I was just like, you left me.
You left me.
Yes. It did. He was just like, oh gosh, she's gonna tell her mother. So then he had to tell my mom before I did. And so that's when they were like telling me as I was like an adult, like, yeah, your dad left you one time. You were big mad. They didn't say big mad but that's what we say now. But yeah, so you just reminded me of that. Veronica says that she grew up spending a lot of time with her aunts. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of us are were exposed to older people when we were younger. And now I consider it a blessing to be able to have some younger people in my life that I care about. So just things to keep in mind about how we are talking to them, what we're saying about ourselves that they're overhearing, because that's going to color how they view getting older. So thank you, Chanelle, for being here and enlightening us and giving us food for thought about how we really approach the topics of age. And I appreciate you being here. I hope you feel heard.
I do feel heard. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. I'm going to end it with letting Chanelle tell her. Oh, Miss Lily says she grew up with her grandma. Yeah, that could be a really interesting perspective too. Like a person 2 generations above you, and how that can color your views on life as well. So Chanelle mentioned earlier that she had taken a little hiatus from blogging. I feel like a lot of us have kind of taken. I don't know that I classify myself as having taken a hiatus. I just call myself a bad blogger. Which I should change that, because that's my whole thing, the no negative self-talk, right? I know. Yes, I know. But
if anyone's a bad blogger, it's me. I legit have no excuses.
Well, see, when you go back, I know Chanelle didn't watch episode 1 because she didn't want it to color her experience tonight. So when you go back and watch Temwa and I's conversation, it's when you feel that something is your passion, and not just your passion, like your purpose, what God intended for you to be doing. When you're not doing it, it bothers you. So I feel like, I haven't written in a while, but I've never really just let it go. So, I've still been active here in our group and other places, and now with the show. But I feel like a lot of people who are very consistent bloggers in general have kind of relaxed with their content, and a lot of people have taken somewhat of hiatus. So Chanelle mentioned she's taken a little bit of a hiatus, but she does do a variety of things. For those of you who've come to Chasing Joy events in person, you have seen her be our photographer, and she typically tries to hide in the background and go unnoticed with her camera. So now you've really gotten to know her tonight. So she does photography, you do like editing, copy editing. Chanelle does a lot of stuff. And I did post a link to her website I think I put it in the topic, the heading for this live, those who are watching the live stream, and I'll definitely have it in the YouTube comments when this episode airs on YouTube. So you can check out her Hire Me page, and if you feel like what she offers, or based off our conversation tonight, what she has to say about aging, if you feel like it's a good fit for what you're doing or what you're thinking of doing, definitely reach out to her. And if Chanelle feels the same, you guys might collaborate. And I think that would be awesome, because my favorite thing, other than talking about chasing joy, is connecting people. Can't get enough of that. So do you have anything that you wanted to share about the things that you do, or any upcoming things you might be interested in, or if you're just going to continue your hiatus and wait for only, super synergistic opportunities to come your way?
I'm always up for anything that's synergistic.
Did I just invent that word? I like it though.
No. Synergy was everywhere for a long time. Let's see. I have taken a break because and we have gone back and forth about this. I tend to only want to do things when I feel like the reward is worth the effort. And so I have taken a break from all of the sort of generational blogging and writing and even the documentary that I was working on and all of that, because it felt like it just wasn't the right time, and there wasn't a whole lot of positive reception from what I was doing. So I would love it if people would, if they do want to have any kind of conversations about it. I'm always willing to bring the chat back, or even to get back online and have stuff if I'm actually having conversations with people, because that's one of the reasons why I'm not even on Twitter or Instagram. Well, I still have my Twitter accounts for Gen Y Chat and writer Chanelle, but I deactivated my Instagram account because I felt like I was talking to myself. And so I'm always up for having conversations with people. I actually did want to start a radio show for Gen Y Chat back when I was trying to reinvent it and figure out a different way to have those conversations. Um, so if you're out there and you're listening to this, and this is something that you felt that you were alone in and didn't have anyone else to talk to about it, please feel free, like reach out to me. Because
So
even
should they contact you through like your email that's on your website?
yep, I have a form on my website where they can, just fill it out, and I think it's called, I forget what it's called.
Contact me, maybe. Let's see. I have your site up. Let's look at it.
Pick My Brain. That's what it is. Yeah.
Ah, nice.
Yeah. So use that form. Reach out to me, and I'm always willing to have those conversations, even if they're one-offs. I'll figure out a way to record it and put it up on my site or something. If you want some pictures taken, feel free to look at my media kit on my website. I have taken pictures at the flower show. They didn't pay me. I just took pictures there. So I've done, flower photography, skies. I've done people. I've done.
So if you guys visit the Chase and Joy page, and if you look at any of the photo albums that are from past events in the last 4 years, Chanelle has been the person who's taken all of those photos. So
yeah.
Or there might be some from my phone, but you can tell the difference. So the nice ones that have very beautiful lighting are, Chanelle's.
Yeah. So, I also do social media audits. So, if you're trying to understand your particular customer funnel and where people are coming from and how to, get better sales, and as it relates to the website and how people are shopping, I do audits of blogs and how people get to your website and get to your sales page and ultimately get through the process of purchasing a product from you. So I do that. I've done lots of different things with regards to building social media pages, editing, creating collateral graphics that go on to the different platforms. So Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Trying to keep up with the general sizing that works for each of those platforms, which can be insane. Those types of things.
So just check out Chanelle's website where her media kit is, her Hire Me page is, and also her form if you want to reach out to her about any questions or ideas or just brainstorming. on anything that we talked about. So that's all on her website. So check her out there. Chanelle, I want to thank you for
Thank you.
being my second guest, right? Second, it's official now. It's officially a show. There's 2 episodes. It's a
Nice.
series.
Yes. Cheers.
So,
See, I changed it. Now it says cheers.
Oh, nice.
It's back to joy. Now it's back to joy. See?
I appreciate
Back to
it.
joy.
Thank you all for watching. Bye.
Bye.